But at this opening evening, I want to just give a very sort of brief overview of where we're up to in OM at the present time. And then I want to call on three people to look at major sections of our ministry. Joseph, just to help us understand what's going on in OM India. He's going to take 10 minutes to try and do that. An impossible task, but he's going to have a bash to include that in a 10-minute period. And then Peter Nicol will update us on OM ships, and then Julian will update us on OM in the Muslim world. Those are three very major areas of our ministry. The rest of the time, we're committed to try and give some profile to what we might view as some of the smaller, less-known ministries in the OM world. That's our goal for this week. So, a brief report on where we're up to in OM around the world today. 12 months ago, I think we expected a very difficult year ahead of us. The global recession was gathering pace, and where it would all end was an open question, which was leading to considerable uncertainty. How would people respond in this uncertainty? Would people still be ready to commit to mission in such days, or would other priorities gain precedence? Well, at the end of 2009, I think we can only say we stand in awe at the faithfulness of God during this past year. 2009 was, in fact, a very good year for Operation Mobilization. It was a very good year as far as people joining our fellowship is concerned. There's an overall increase of just under 200 people. 639 new people joined us in the past year. These figures don't include OM India. We don't have the latest figures from OM India, but the rest of the OM world, there's been an increase in 2009 of 185. And that for me was a big surprise and a big encouragement in days of recession. Financially, of course, it has been a struggle. There's no question about that. But as the figures within the corporate services report will reveal, we didn't have the difficulties that we expected we would have. Though I'm sure we've held back on starting a number of ministries in 2009, I haven't heard of one ministry which we've had to close during the past year purely for financial reasons. Now, it's possible, of course, that people are no longer telling me such things, but I certainly don't recall being informed of any closure of any ministry in 2009 purely due to finance. Now, I hope you're all sitting there appreciating the enormity of what I've just said. People sometimes ask, do we continue to see the supernatural within OM? Some people still ask, are we still praying in OM? Are we seeing answers to prayer? Well, what I've just very briefly reported to you is clearly, for me, God's amazing provision in answer to many specific prayers. And we should be a very, very thankful people at the beginning of this ILM. The answer to many prayers, certainly, and also the answer, or the result, if you like, of very much hard work on behalf of many, many people in this room. I think one thing worthy of note is how important our emphasis has been on raising personal support. The actual personal support figures in 2009 seem to have slightly increased. And we've looked at the last three recessions and how recessions impact philanthropy, how they impact charitable giving. Very interesting to look at the trend. General charitable giving doesn't hold up very well in a recession. Christian charitable giving holds up much better for much longer. But the support of individuals from Christians holds up the longest. They will go on supporting people they're committed to as long as they possibly can. And you'll find, looking at previous recessions, that that sort of personal support of workers is only hit when unemployment becomes a major part of the recession. So we're very thankful to God as we look back on 2009. What have been some of the highlights and some of the great challenges? Well, many of us were very nervous, I think, about the merger with ProCristo 12 months ago. It seemed to be really struggling. And I want to report to you that I believe that that has developed magnificently during the past 12 months. There's been a lot of give and take from leadership, and I'm very, very encouraged at the way the work is going in the African continent at the present time. There have, of course, been huge changes in OM ships, both highlights and huge challenges. The launch of Logos Hope, what can we say? But thanks to God and a huge number of people for that development in our ministry. The change of CEO, a very painful transition. But I believe Peter has made an excellent start in his leadership of this ministry. The end of doulos, a shock and a huge challenge. But I again feel something that's been handled with great skill and great grace. And I believe particular appreciation should be expressed to the doulos leadership team under Sealand's leadership. I think they did a marvelous job in the last months of MV Doulos. There have been very significant changes on the International Executive Committee, with Rick Hicks, Kevin Penman, and Mike Hay joining us, and of course Peter Nicol moving his role, his position within the IEC. The first ever election of the International General Council, which will immediately follow these meetings, is a milestone. And I want to acknowledge the tireless work of David Greenlee in this regard. We wouldn't be where we are today with General Council matters, but for David's incredible commitment over these last 12 months. Mission Net in 2009, progress towards Transform 2010, almost up to 100 Dalit centers in India. Now, you're going to hear later of continuing response in the Muslim world. And on and on and on you can go. And I could go on for a long, long time. Great blessings and many challenges along the way. So, where are we in March 2010? I want to state that I'm more encouraged about OM today than I have been for many, many years. This encouragement is in the middle of difficulties, as I've just shown looking back on 2009. So what is the reason for my encouragement this evening? I want to give you 4 reasons why I personally am greatly encouraged about OM right now. Probably a lot of my encouragement has to do with my own spiritual experience in recent months. I've written a little about this in the latest copy of Relay. In summary, I've personally had a renewed experience of the presence of God. Just very simply, the living reality of God. I saw that I'd sort of drifted in to theological belief, theological understanding, but that daily sense of the reality of a living God and a real expectation that I and others in this room might hear his voice and might see his direct intervention, might know his direction for our lives and for our ministry. That's been a very, very refreshing experience for me in the past few weeks. Secondly, I'm encouraged by the unity we have at leadership level in the work. I look forward to our International Executive Committee meetings. I have been looking forward to these ILM meetings. Of course, we have not and will not agree on all issues, but I'm very grateful to God for the atmosphere we enjoy as a movement, where I believe we can have sensible discussions together, seeking God's solutions to disagreements as they arise. That's an incredibly precious gift from God. It's something we must do everything to retain, knowing that Satan will use everything within his considerable powers to destroy that gift that we enjoy. And then thirdly, our partners around the world have shown, as I've just expressed through those figures, they've shown huge commitment and faithfulness during these difficult financial times. And again, this is not something we should take lightly, but is a wonderful proof of the fact that undergirding this ministry, we not only have the everlasting arms of God, but we also have a solid foundation of support from his people. Again, that's not something we should take lightly. We should be daily thankful to God for it, and daily thankful and appreciative of the many people who work in our offices to encourage that support, to build and to strengthen that foundation. The fourth reason that I'm encouraged is that vision and commitment continues to be evident all around the OM world. I would encourage you just to get a copy of the annual report, which Greg has pulled together, and that gives us a glimpse at least of some of this vision and commitment. That annual report will be a centerfold in Relay magazine at the same time. I continue to find myself surprised and mightily encouraged when I go to field retreats and area retreats. It's one of the real blessings of my life to visit these retreats. Not so much to speak, though that's a privilege, but to listen to the stories of what God is doing around the OM world. And I come away from these retreats thinking, wow, I don't know the half of what's going on in Operation Mobilization. And I just long that we could get more of the stories of what God is doing around our own fellowship. Never mind communicating it to the outside world, but just the stories of what God is doing, just to disseminate them around our own fellowship. That would be a tremendous privilege. I go away from those retreats thinking two things. One, I never knew the half of what God is doing. And secondly, I'm deeply honored and privileged to be part of this fellowship. So, 4 reasons for me being a very encouraged person this evening. Of course, it's not all joy and it's not all progress. And I want to be very realistic. During the past year, I've been involved in seeking to bring leaders together who have become disunited, and ministry has suffered because of that. Sexual and financial indiscretions have had the potential to destroy both lives and ministries. I've also recognized failure in my own leadership, and I can think specifically of 2 occasions where I feel I've personally failed, and that has impacted people's lives negatively and held ministry back from development. So encouragement, yes, but challenges and disappointments along the way. But overall, I'm extremely encouraged, but also challenged, because I believe we are on the threshold of the next major forward move for this ministry. I sense we've arrived at what we might call a glass ceiling. And in these ILM meetings, we need to smash through that glass and then watch God do even greater things in the year ahead. And in the agenda before us this week, you'll see the elements which I believe make up that glass ceiling. So I just want to speak about 3 things before I call on Joseph and the others to bring their reports. 3 things. First, and fundamentally, if we're going to break through this glass ceiling, we must continue what we've been doing for many years, and that is decentralizing the strategic leadership of the ministry. I believe our area coordinators have become or are becoming area leaders. That's happening and needs to continue to happen. This movement is now far too large, far too diverse for anything less than our area coordinators becoming area leaders. I also believe that as part of this continuing decentralizing, we need to see leadership even more dispersed throughout the organization. Margaret Wheatley talks about this in her book, Leadership and the New Science. I haven't read the whole of the book yet, but her main thesis is based around the change from what she calls a Newtonian mechanistic worldview to the new worldview of quantum physics. I think she's talking about a change from a world based on machine images with boundaries, where everyone knows their place in the machine, to a world which is much more based on fluid images. She talks of images such as waves, relationships, the vast web of life. This is what she writes. In such times, the era of the rugged individual has been already replaced by the era of the team player. Here, power is generated through relationships. And she comments, this is why we live in a world where small groups of highly motivated people can change the politics of the most powerful nations on earth. So I look to an OM where increasingly leadership is decentralized. And where leadership is based, it's seen to be team leadership. Yes, a team with a leader. I do believe in leadership. Team leadership, a team with a leader, but the leader very much respecting the wisdom of the collective team. So does this mean there will be no international leadership? It's a question I'm always being asked. Am I working myself out of a job? Well, I believe there is still a place for international leadership. For just a few minutes, I want to speak about my philosophy of leadership in this role as international coordinator. I am doing this because the IEC thought it would be useful for me to express this to you. In some contexts, I call myself international director because the word coordinator would confuse rather than help. But when I call myself international director, I know in one sense I am the international director of nothing. There is no OM International legally, apart from a charity based in the UK which looks over the Ministry of ICT. As you can see from the governance documents, we are a family of independent legal entities or entities without legal status. So the legal responsibility for the ministry, for example, in the UK, where I reside, the legal responsibility for that ministry is in the hands of the UK board. These entities sign up to our memorandum of agreement, and we're reviewing that at these meetings. It's a document which has never been tested in a court of law, and that's probably just as well, because legally I don't think it would prove to be very robust. I personally love this situation. Some people think, how on earth can you lead in such chaos? I personally love this situation. It means that I can't go into a difficult situation throwing my weight around, because legally I have very little weight. I need to lead, along with the area coordinators, by persuasion, by my own personal credibility, or any credibility that I may have, and through the give and the take of negotiation. And that's the kind of leadership I love to be involved in. Now, of course, it doesn't mean there's no authority internationally. There was one situation this year which, after some time of persuasion and negotiation, just didn't seem to be improving. And it was clear that unless something was done, people would go on being damaged, and the Christian testimony in that nation might also be damaged. I, along with the area leader responsible for that field, made it very clear to the leader and to the board that unless there was appropriate action, we could not support that situation continuing. And the way we would stop that support would be to stop the flow of people and finance to that field. That's an ultimate authority that we have internationally. However, it's a power I've never had to use. I didn't have to use it in that situation. I've never had to use it, and I hope the day never comes when I have to use it. So that, for me, is the first fundamental necessity, to continue this decentralization, to continue to empower, train, and release leadership dispersed throughout the movement. Second necessity. As we decentralize, we must consolidate our international governance. If we're going to decentralize, at the same time, we must consolidate our international governments. There is a crucial and difficult balance to be maintained here, but we must work at it until we get it right. Wherever we are moving people and money around the world, there must be some understandings, there must be some agreements concerning how we do that. Traditionally, the West has been the provider, and the rest of the world the receivers. That, of course, has changed radically, particularly when it comes to people. And that will continue to change, not just people-wise, it will begin to change financially as well. The danger over the years has been that the provider of the resources has wanted far too much control over the ministry they have been resourcing. That's resulted in indigenous expression of ministry being curtailed and those doing the ministry demeaned. Our commitment must be to avoid that at all costs. I love one sentence from Robertson McQuilkin. He's addressing particularly the financial aspects of this issue, and this is what he wrote. We must learn to share financial resources in a way that is spiritually empowering and Great Commission completing. If you're involved in financial resourcing, you might want to write that down. We must share financial resources in a way that is spiritually empowering and Great Commission completing. The immense work done by David Greenlee, Keith Mallon, and Christine Ross to consolidate our international governance documents, and you're going to be receiving the results of their work all week, and the creation of the International General Council are important steps in developing our international governance structure. So number one, breaking through the glass ceiling, decentralizing leadership, spreading leadership, empowering leadership. Number two, consolidating our international governance. Thirdly, the issue covered in the paper in your pack entitled Global Partnership Breakthrough. And you'll see the vision behind that paper is to mobilize thousands of Christian workers in and from the materially poorer nations, thereby releasing through global partnership a truly international mission force that by God's grace will play its part in bringing the task of world evangelization to completion. Brothers and sisters, I believe this is a key project for 2010. It's a key project if we're going to see existing vital ministry maintained. Places like Sudan, places like Bangladesh, places like Pakistan. We are going to have to see some breakthrough in this area to see these ministries maintained in the coming years. But if we can see breakthroughs in such a partnership, I believe we can also see whole new developments in ministry around the world. The three simple issues I'm looking for at this ILM to break through, or to begin to break through that glass ceiling, and to lead us into further development of our ministry. So you can see, going into these meetings, I'm encouraged, though I trust not blind to major issues we face, particularly issues of sustainability in large areas of our ministry. I believe if we work well together this week, we can shatter that glass ceiling as we continue decentralization, strengthen international governance, and work to see this partnership, which I believe can mobilize many, many more workers. In closing, may I just humbly suggest that what God has been impressing on me in recent days might be for more than me. It's very simple. He is the living God. And we should be expecting, therefore, to see his life, his power, his interventions in our movement. I've suggested elsewhere that OM has traditionally had a strong emphasis on the Word of God, and that must at all costs continue. In more recent years, the word emphasis has been accompanied by a works emphasis, demonstration as well as proclamation. Here's a question for you to meditate on. Do we now need to be more expectant of a wonders emphasis? Word, works, and wonders. That we might see more of the wonderful, clearly supernatural interventions of God in our lives and in our ministry. William Plumer wrote this: "Our theology is never right till in our hearts we invest God with infinite power and infinite perfections." Our theology is never right till in our hearts we invest God with infinite power and infinite perfections. The psalmist wrote this: "The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." I've been praying for the last 3 months for some sort of text or some sort of motto for the ILM. And I can get no farther than those simple words. The Lord Almighty is with us. I trust we'll move into the year ahead expecting his interventions into our lives and into our ministry. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Joseph, and he's going to bring us up to date with the work of God in India. Thank you, Joseph.